He submits his annual budget to include an estimate of the cost per taxpayer of the deficit. Thanks for watching this morning. We'll be back tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Eastern.
The House will be in order. The Chair lays before the House a communication from the Speaker.
The Speaker's Rooms, Washington, D.C., March 5th, 2013. I hereby appoint the Honorable Ron DeSantis to act as Speaker pro tempore on this day. Signed, John A. Boehner, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
The House will be in order. Pursuant to the order of the House of January 3rd, 2013, the Chair will now recognize members from lists submitted by the majority and minority leaders for morning hour debate. The Chair will alternate recognition between the parties, with each party limited to 1 hour and each member other than the majority and minority leaders and the minority whip limited to 5 minutes each, but in no event shall debate continue beyond 11:50 a.m. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. Blumenauer, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we wait for the Congress and administration to deal with how to do business differently for defense, for health care, for the tax code, we can take a break today as we welcome over 750 men and women from every state in the Union who are here for the 14th Annual Bicycle Summit. They represent, as you might expect, people from cycling clubs, mountain bike industry. They're dedicated recreational cyclists, those who are involved with bike tourism, which has become very big business, by the way. And speaking of business, they're representatives of bicycle repair, bicycle manufacturing, and others who design, manufacture, and sell equipment and apparel. Bicycles mean business. In my hometown alone, over $150 million of economic activity in a year, employing over 1,000 people. As the Bike Summit attendees visit Capitol Hill later this week, we'll have an opportunity to hear from people of all ages, all walks of life, communities large and small. They are firm in the belief that the federal government should be a stronger partner in capitalizing on the most efficient form of urban transportation ever designed. Bicycles burn calories, not fossil fuel, and take up 1/10 of the space of a car. More importantly, for those who drive, every bicycle in the protected bike lane next to you is not a car in front of you or competing for a scarce parking space. The goal here is to give Americans more choices about how they move, making it safe for children to walk or bike to school. It helps those children, it relieves stress on the family, and can cut 30% of the rush hour congestion while helping kids stay active at a time when we're obsessing about lack of physical activity for our children, and that level is already too low and declining. Bicycling is a natural remedy. Cities of all sizes are participating in the bicycle revolution. It would not be nearly as advanced as it is but for $9.8 billion of federal investment since the ICE-T reauthorization. It has accelerated programs, leveraged other investments, and has increased transportation capacity for everybody, and done so more cost-effectively than any other expenditure. By the way, $1 million invested in bicycle facilities creates more family wage jobs than simply constructing more miles of highway. It's also easier and faster to accomplish. At a time when America has an infrastructure debt that is in the trillions of dollars, when that infrastructure is falling apart and unreliable, our coalition for policies and resources to rebuild and renew America will be stronger if it includes the millions of Americans who travel by bike. I strongly urge my colleagues and their staff to take the time to visit with these advocates this week. Hear the stories about transforming communities of all sizes, rural, urban, suburban. Most important, learn how they are giving families safe transportation choices that they never had before. Visit with these cycling leaders, more important, at home. When you are back, get on a bike, walk a trail, join the volunteers, witness an event with your family, and talk to the bike businesses and communities partners. All of these stakeholders can help us visualize what the federal partnership could mean in making communities across America more livable and our families safer, healthier, and more economically secure.
Gentleman yields back his time. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Rothfuss, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 5 minutes and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I rise to recognize Anne Marie Kilcourse Wilson of Johnstown, Pennsylvania, an extraordinary woman. She passed away on February 19, 2013 at the all too young age of 47, following a brief and courageous battle with cancer. Mrs. Wilson could have been anyone's daughter, anyone's wife, anyone's mother, co-worker, employer, or fellow church member. She was extraordinary because she excelled in each of these roles. She was a woman for all seasons. Anne Wilson was born in 1965 in the Bronx of Irish stock, the daughter of Thomas and Frances Kilcourse. She graduated from St. John the Baptist High School in West Islip, New York, and earned a degree in political science from the Catholic University of America. She worked in New York City before moving to Johnstown, the hometown of her husband, Bill. In the mountains of western Pennsylvania, this daughter of the Bronx became an adopted daughter of Johnstown, and she thrived there. She brought into the world 3 beautiful children, Katie, Billy, and Clara, whom she and Bill loved dearly. And while she was raising her family, Anne pursued her professional calling with excellence and determination as the marketing director for the Gleason Agency. Her energy was incomparable. The energy of her professional work could also be seen in her commitment to public service. In 2005, Anne made her first attempt at public office and won a 4-year term on the Johnstown City Council. She took the oath of office in January 2006 and was the first Republican woman elected to the council. Notably, Anne was the top vote-getter on the ticket, beating out 7 incumbents. In a city where Democrats outnumber Republicans 7-3, she was the top vote-getter, demonstrating her broad bipartisan appeal. She was re-elected in 2009 and appointed deputy mayor of Johnstown in January 2010. She also served as executive director and later chairman of the Cambria County Republican Committee. In 2012, Governor Tom Corbett appointed her to the Pennsylvania Commission for Women, and she was elected as a delegate to the 2012 Republican National Convention. While her energy and professional accomplishments were remarkable, the 2 things that mattered most to her were her family and her church. Mrs. Wilson lived for her husband and children, and she rarely missed a sporting or school event that involved the kids. She loved family time and family vacations. and she was deeply committed to her Catholic faith, and she was a strong advocate for the right to life and compassion for all. In a world and time given to cynicism and doubt, Ann Wilson stands out in stark contrast. She is a role model for excellence in family life, professional work, and community engagement. Indeed, she was full of passion for the things of life that really mattered. It is a privilege to stand here today to remember Mrs. Ann Wilson of Johnstown, Pennsylvania. Her family and Johnstown's loss is heaven's gain. May she rest in peace, and may her family be comforted in their loss. She will be missed not only by her husband and children, but by her community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Poe, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, the talk around town is the paranoid gun control crowd want more gun restrictions and more gun control, more government control over guns. If they had their way, some of them would actually outlaw the Second Amendment. And the result, the people would have no guns. The only ones that would have guns would be the government and, of course, criminals who ignore gun laws. I call it the Mexico model. Guns are outlawed in Mexico. The citizens cannot possess guns. There is no Second Amendment. So the government has guns, and criminals have guns. Some of those criminals have guns thanks in part to the United States government sending 2,000 assault weapons to them in Fast and Furious. But that's another story. U.S. cities are moving toward the Mexico model. Chicago and Washington, D.C. have laws that make it very difficult for a citizen to exercise the Second Amendment. These cities make it difficult to even own a firearm. But all three places, Mexico, Chicago, Washington, D.C., all have a reputation of violent, unsafe places. Why? Because they are. In D.C., if D.C. was so safe, why are government guards everywhere in the city? Even here in this Capitol building, there are armed guards on the roof, at the doors, at the back doors, at the doors over to the east and to the west. It's hypocritical of the gun control crowd in this chamber to say, more guns for me, but not for thee. If these cities were safe, gun control laws would work, but they don't work. But there is a federal law that the city of Richmond, Virginia took advantage of, and it goes back to 1997. Richmond, Virginia was one of the top 5 U.S. cities with the highest per capita murder rate in the United States. So the city used a federal law to help them control the crime problem. Project Exile is the name. The local and state government voluntarily cooperated with the United States Attorney's Office in gun prosecutions. Here's how it works. If a local state law enforcement official arrested some criminal for a felony offense, but the person also had a gun, the state official could voluntarily transfer the case to federal court, because in federal court the person could be prosecuted by the U.S. Attorney's Office and get an additional 5 years in the federal penitentiary because the criminal, the drug dealer, had a firearm in their possession. It's a simple plan that worked quite well. In fact, it worked so well that in the first year, Richmond, Virginia, homicide rate was down 33%. And by 1999, homicides in Virginia, Richmond, Virginia, were down 97%. All because the criminal was prosecuted for unlawfully possessing a firearm, and the government put their resources where they should, prosecuting criminals that use guns in the commission of their offense. The law held the criminal accountable and exiled him out of the community. That's where the phrase Project Exile comes from. He was exiled from the community to the federal penitentiary where other criminals were. Lock the gun-toting crooks up and send them away. What a novel idea. A law that's already on the books. Maybe violent cities like Chicago Washington, D.C., should look at Project Exile and hold criminals accountable for the violence that they commit, and not be misguided by some who continue to assault the Second Amendment and not punish criminals. Maybe our system should focus on the person who commits the crime with a weapon, as opposed to trying to punish really good folks that own firearms and exercise their right under the Second Amendment to bear arms. And that's just the way it is. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Pursuant to Clause 12 Alpha of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House in recess until noon today.
The House returns at noon Eastern to begin its legislative work for the day. On tap, two bills.